podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'm so honored to be joined by one of my most favorite people here on campus, the Dean of Career Services, Steve Hassinger. Steve, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Paul. I always appreciate being able to be a guest on a podcast.
And I will tell you, over the years, your broadcast skills have elevated multiple times. It's unbelievable. It's almost like I'm with a seasoned professional over here in terms of how you present yourself on the air, and I appreciate that so much. It's almost like you're in line to be my next co-host.
Well, practice makes perfect, they say, although I've heard that only perfect practice makes perfect. Right?
Well, and what's really interesting about that is what we're going to be talking about today, the CPEC Job Fair. Might be a little bit earlier than people are used to, but to that extent, going to job fairs over and over makes perfect. So we'll certainly chat about that. Also being joined here today by nightly news reporter Sarah Whitmire. Sarah, welcome back to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And one of the things that I did want to point out, too, is that Sarah is just got off of her first cover story about the podcast. So Sarah's been doing some wonderful things with the nightly news, and we look forward to another wonderful semester. So Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, thank you.
All right, well, Steve, what we're going to talk about today is, like I said, the upcoming CPEC Job Fair. That's going to be taking place on November 2nd from 11 to 2, and it's going to be at Adams Rickey Park. And for those of you who maybe are CPEC veterans or have been there in the past or at least were aware of it, you might think two things. Number one, it wasn't at Adams Rickey Park, and number two, wasn't it in February? So let's start with those two questions, really kind of presenting them together. Steve, this is clearly not the CPEC Job Fair of years past. So tell me a little bit more about, number one, Adams Rickey Park. We're doing this outdoor type of thing. And number two, why did you decide, obviously, to move it up several months in the calendar?
Yeah. So first of all, we are crossing our fingers and hoping that we are going to have a good weather day on November 2nd. We do have a rain date of November 3rd if necessary, but it is totally outdoors. There are going to be some food trucks there. Central Penn students or alumni who come are going to get a ticket for a free lunch, so they can go to one of the food trucks and get lunch for free, which is just another benefit to come out in addition to networking with employers. Going back to February of 2022, we had the CPEC event, as we typically do, in a traditional setting, indoors, and we had 92 job seekers come from 15 schools at that point, and it was also open to the public. It's very expensive to do an event in that type of venue. So we had over $16,000 in expense, and we had 55 companies, I think it was there, which was not bad, but 92 job seekers. That's not a real good return on investment. So even prior to COVID, we were starting to see attendance at traditional job fairs declining. And then obviously with COVID, we had to do a virtual job fair for 1 year. Coming out of COVID, we didn't know what to expect. So having 92 students or 92 job seekers there in February, we said, we need to try something else. We need to try something different, something a little bit out of the box. So this group of people from all these colleges and universities gets together along with our employer members of our advisory panel. And we started talking back in, May, June, and said, what can we try that's different? And we came up with this idea to do a tailgating type atmosphere event in the fall. So it will be out on a soccer field. The employers will be parking at another area, but they will have a 10 by 20 or 20 by 20 space on the soccer field where they can set up. They can bring their table. Some of them have said, we're going to bring cornhole boards. We're going to bring other types of games. We're going to make it a tailgate atmosphere. So will be interesting to see what happens. Most of the employers that I've talked to about the event are pretty excited, and they're excited to try something different as well.
Now, let me ask you, obviously, and or maybe not obviously, to those of you who have listened to the show before, and that's what I meant when I said obviously, CPEC is what we call a consortium. And so this is 15 other schools, and along with Central Penn, that are going together to do this. It's always been a relatively centralized location here, so some of the schools do have to travel some. But why do you think that the attendance has, there's still the same relatively amount of students, and you would think the same number of job seekers. Why do you believe that the attendance has fallen over the years?
Well, two things. The other schools for the most part, do job fairs on their campus. Matter of fact, one of them had a job fair last week. So I think the employers say, well, I'm just going to go here on my campus to the job fair, which, I understand. The other thing is I think students think, well, I'll just go online and apply, right? Why do I have to come out to a job fair? But one of the biggest frustrations that I hear, and I was just talking to a student right before I came over here, as a matter of fact, and he was kind of expressing this, is, you put out all these resumes and sometimes you hear nothing, right? So going and being there in person and being able to talk to the employers, put a face with the resume, it automatically gets you past that first step in the process, which can be very frustrating and wondering, is my resume just out there in cyberspace? And good recruiters, and there are good recruiters and there are bad recruiters, obviously, but those recruiters who are what I call the front of the table type of people, all right? So they're approaching you. They want to talk to you. They want to engage in conversation with you. They will remember the people who made an impression on them at an event, at a networking event, at a job fair, and so forth. So when they then go later in the week and they pull those resumes off the website and they say, oh, here's Sarah's resume. I met Sarah at Tailgate and Relate. Sarah was really engaging. I think we really need to bring Sarah in and do an interview with her.
And Sarah, one of the reasons that I wanted you to come on, obviously, because I think extremely highly of you, but secondly, because you were at CPEC last year. Now, yes, it is going to be different. But I wonder, Sarah, could you tell me a little bit about your experience last year and maybe some tips for students out there maybe who have never been to a job fair?
I would like to say first that it's really important to make a good first impression, that you want to be personable and very open to an extent with people that you are meeting at these job fairs. I know that from my experience that being at the CPEC and then going to another job fair, same employers were there, that they remembered me because they remember my story and they remember how personable I am. So it's been really an interesting process and almost an evolution of how job fairs have been for me. It's been interesting to see how many employers actually remember me when I go, because it actually shows me, hey, they're actually interested. I don't have to stay where I'm at.
And Steve would certainly agree with you on that one. But I think that's really cool, and I'm so glad that you've had that experience. Steve, I think one of the most interesting and probably first questions that I want to ask is, obviously, when we think about going to a job fair, we want to dress in a nice shirt and tie and nice, polish up the shoes, our dress shoes. I wonder, and I think honestly the biggest question I've had students ask me about is how should we dress? I mean, yes, I guess it wouldn't be out of line to dress that way, but even you mentioned it's going to be a bit more informal. So from your personal perspective, how do you think students should dress coming to this event?
Yeah, so they can kick it down a notch, definitely. You're going to be out in the middle of a soccer field. All right. Now, we were over there a few weeks ago kind of scouting and looking at the layout and figuring out what's going to go where and so forth. It had rained for about 2 days off and on prior to that, and we were actually very impressed that the field had held the water so well and it wasn't muddy and things like that. So, it's not like you're going to be out there slopping around in mud or something like that. But at the same time, you are going to be out in a soccer field. It is going to be a tailgate atmosphere. So it's fine to dress as you would if you were going to go to a football game, let's say a football tailgate or a soccer tailgate or something like that. So if you want to wear a nice sweatshirt, want to wear a nice pair of jeans, that will be okay at this event. Obviously, you don't want to look like you just rolled out of bed. Your hair's a mess. Your clothing is torn, is disheveled, that type of thing. You want to look nice, all right? But you don't need to wear the suit and tie. You don't need to wear a skirt. You don't need to wear a pantsuit to come to this event. You're not going to see the employers dressed that way. You're going to see them dressed more casually in a tailgate type atmosphere.
I had a couple students directly ask me what I thought, and I said, I think, and of course it depends on the temperature, right? If it's in the 50s and 60s, then sure, a polo shirt,
yep,
maybe long sleeves underneath, nice pair of jeans, nice sneakers. I think that's fine.
Yep.
Of course, if it's colder than that, a nice sweatshirt, nice clothing, and that was one of the biggest things that we were kind of talking about off air here, is that because it's a bit less formal, you still should take time to think about what you're going to wear and not just grab something. Like, you want it to still be a strong representation of you. And again, whether that's a polo and jeans, or whether that's a pair of khaki pants and a button-up shirt, like, all of that's fine. But at the same time, you still are essentially going to be evaluated by these employers. And as we know, your first impression means everything. So even though, and I want to be very clear about this, even though this is a much less formal situation than the CPEC Job Fair of years past, you don't want to look like, to your point, Steve, that you just rolled out of bed. You want to make sure that you're giving that first impression that you want for an employer. And I think that that's so important. And I almost concerned, I suppose, that not enough people are going to take their dress seriously enough because it's a bit more informal. But that's what we're here for, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Sarah, I wanted to go back to you here. So you talked a bit more about your experience that you'd had at the previous job fair, but there still are a lot of people out there that maybe are going to this for their first time, or maybe they're getting to their junior year and there's a lot on the line here. Can you just share maybe two of the best tips that you had received in previous ones, or tips from your own experience?
I definitely remember last year when it was my first fair that I was going to. I was really nervous because I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm having to meet all these strangers. I'm having to basically sell myself. And I've never really been good at that until I started actually taking other people's advice on the things that I need to basically upsell. Conversation skills is very important. Not just waiting for them to say hi, but go and greet first. Be the first to say, hello, my name is Sarah. Nice to meet you. And don't expect correspondence first. Like, you need to be the first one to engage.
Initiate, right. So initiate conversation with those folks, especially the ones that you definitely want to make sure that you talk to. Give me another tip that you might be able to share with our students.
You don't have to go to every single booth. That one was something that really kind of shocked me when someone told me that, but I can see why. You want to go to the booths that are relevant to your future career and your interests. You don't have to feel bad about not going to every single booth that's set up.
I'm really glad you made that point, because that was one of the things that I always try to work with my students on. If I could sort of maybe expand on Sarah's thoughts here, what I suggest and advise is that students have a list of between 5 and 10 employers, I'd say 10 on the high side, of 5 to 10 employers that they definitely want to make sure that they speak with. And what I typically have students do is, even at the old school CPEC Job Fair, to sort of just take like 15-minute blocks, right? So let's say I want to go interview, or I want to go speak with the folks at the table of Hershey Resorts, right? So I want to go and do some preliminary research, learn about maybe some of these positions, and take some time, even if it's just on my phone, to do a little bit of research. Now, yes, does everyone know what Hershey does? Yes, I get that. They're a very huge employer in this area. Obviously, they make chocolate, but they also have a ton of restaurants and concerts and other events that are all important. Think about other companies. Think about companies maybe you're not overly knowledgeable about. You want to take the time to learn about those companies. So when you go up, it's not, hey, what are you doing? It's, hey, I understand that you do this, and I would love to know how I can fit in. Because usually that first couple of sentences that you say is really that first impression that we talk about. And so in the end, I think having a list of, like I said, between 5 and maybe 8 companies that you definitely want to talk to, and then after you speak with all those folks, you can go from there. Maybe stop and grab lunch, or maybe you run into somebody who does come up to you and wants to talk to you. That's the time to do that. But I typically share with my students how important it is to go in with a plan.
Mm-hmm. I love something that Sarah said initially. She said she saw employers at another job fair then who remembered her story. Okay, thinking about that story, we call it your elevator speech sometimes, right? Just being able to walk up to an employer and say, this is who I am, this is my major, if I'm a current student, or this is what my major was, if I've already graduated, this is kind of what I'm looking for, and, this is why I'm interested in your company. And the conversation will flow from there. Right? The employer will jump in and they will ask you questions. They will tell you things, but being able to do that, a little bit of that research ahead of time, and then being able to tell your story.
Yes, I love it. So once again, we're talking about the CPEC Job Fair Tailgate and Relate that's going to be on November 2nd from 11 to 2 at Adams Rickey Park. Central Penn students do get a free lunch ticket, and if you need a ride, you can always reach out to Career Services at centralpenn.edu, and they can help you out with coordination of the van schedule. Steve, in the last few minutes of our show here, I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak to some of the employers who have already registered and will be there. Obviously, we don't have time to go through all of them,
right.
But if you wanted to highlight some of those folks who are going to be there and maybe let us know where we can find this list.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a good variety of employers, and they will continue to register up to the date of the event. So, for instance, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania will be represented. Well, they hire for any position that you can possibly think of. More specifically, the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission will be there. There are places like Ritter Insurance Marketing. They've constantly been one of the best places to work in Pennsylvania, one of the fastest growing employers. Members First Federal Credit Union, Fulton Bank, so if you're looking more at the financial side. There'll even be places like Liberty Excavators that will be there. Enterprise Holdings, the parent company of Enterprise Rent-A-Car, they typically are one of the companies that hires the most new college graduates each year for their management development program. Capital Blue Cross, so large insurance company, Boyer and Ritter, Brown Schultz, Sheridan, and Fritz, so more accounting-focused types of companies. Select Medical Corporation, they're a huge employer, and they've hired a lot of our graduates over the years.
But all majors will also be represented too, correct?
Absolutely.
So it doesn't matter what your major is, you're going to be able to find at least at a minimum a handful, at maximum much more than that, of opportunities of employers.
Yep, absolutely. So a wide variety of employers. York County Office of Children, Youth, and Families. So maybe for our criminal justice students. So there's a wide variety there.
And that's one of the biggest things that I love about CPEC is not only are you putting out there all of our majors, but even beyond that, because again, this is a consortium and other colleges are going to be a part of this as well. So
Absolutely.
Where can students find this list?
So it is on College Central Network. And if they contact Career Services at centralpenn.edu, we will send them a direct link so that they don't have to look too hard for it. Unfortunately, there have been some issues with the CPEC website lately, so there are links off of the website. But if they contact Career Services at centralpenn.edu, we will get them a direct link to the list of employers that they can research ahead of time.
So the CPEC app not happening this year?
The app is not happening this year, because of the layout. It was going to be a little bit hard to do that, so it will not be on the app, but there is a link there on College Central Network, which is where all the employers are registering.
But they also can still go to the CPEC website, though, right?
They can if they go under the employer information for the fair. There's a link there.
Okay.
So there's some outdated information there. It's a long story, but the person who was the webmaster has moved on to another location, and the current person who's in charge of that has gotten locked out of the website. So there's some outdated information on there.
Well, if you would like any further details, including the employer list, or you need a ride, or maybe you even want to stop by the career closet to check out and see what types of nice career-focused clothing, either for CPEC or for any other job events.
Absolutely.
Please reach out to Career Services at centralpenn.edu, and Steve or Kristen will gladly help you and guide you in the right direction. Just one final thing that I wanted to talk about here. Do you think that this is the future of job fairs? I'm not just necessarily talking about CPEC, but I'm talking about job fairs in general. Do you think part of the reason that they've maybe not been so well attended is just because maybe that's not necessarily the type of situation people want to put themselves in? Do you think that this might be the future of job fairs?
Yeah, I think so. So, as we always do, we have to evaluate, numbers from this event and outcomes, so it's not just about numbers. I mean, I told you there were only 92 job seekers at that event, but we had students who got jobs.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we have students who are working in some great positions today as a result of people that they met there. So, what were the numbers like and what were the outcomes like? And, if this event goes well, maybe we do a similar type of event. Maybe we decide to go back to a more traditional setting. There are virtual job fairs happening now that I think we're going to see continue as a result of COVID and things that happen. I think some of the aspects that we learned throughout COVID are going to continue. There are some places that do a combination. They have an in-person fair and then they have a virtual fair that continues maybe for several weeks after the in-person fair. So we're always constantly going to be evaluating and figuring out what's the best delivery method.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, I hope you're looking forward to this event. You're continue to grow ever closer to being ready to not only just look for an internship, but a job as well. So I hope that you're able to take away some positive things from this and maybe in a little bit easier atmosphere to approach for your average student. So I just wish you the best at this, and please let me know how I can help you.
Of course. I'm really excited about it.
The CPEC Job Fair, November 2nd from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Adams-Rickey Park. The Tailgate and Relate theme. And let's check. This is going to be a great time. Let's just cross our fingers for some nice weather, some nice fall weather, and hope that this event goes very well. And then maybe this is what the future holds for CPEC. Who knows?
We'll see.
All right. Well, hey, it's been my pleasure to have both of you on today. I wanted to thank Nightly News reporter Sarah Whitmire for being here today. Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And the Dean of Career Services, Steve Hassinger, and potentially my new co-host for the Nightly News down the line. Steve, as always, thank you for chatting, and it's always my pleasure to not only be a part of this, but get my classes involved with this. It's so important to me and our program learning outcomes, and I just thank you so much for this partnership that we have.
And Career Services appreciates the opportunity to get the word out there, so thank you for the invitation.
It's my pleasure. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. We'll see you again next time.
This is Norman Geary, news correspondent. Thank you for listening to the Nightly News Podcast, the voice of the Knights.
Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'm so honored to be joined by the members of our esports team. Not only do we have our coaches, we also have our captain, and we have a new member of the Nightly News here sitting in with us today on our discussion about esports. So first off, I'd like to introduce, we have Michael Pico, the head coach of our esports team. This is the first time I've ever had you down on the podcast, so it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
We also have Angel Gutierrez. He is the captain of the esports team. Angel, thank you so much for taking the time out to be here today.
You're welcome.
A man of few words. That's quite all right, though. Also being joined by Donnie Lewis, who is the assistant coach of the esports team. Donnie, welcome.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
And we're also being joined by one of our newest Nightly News members, Nick Hogan. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
All right, so one of the things that we're going to try to do today is we're going to talk a little bit more about how this newest sport to Central Penn College athletics came to be, some of the aspects of it, talk about your season so far, and kind of take a look at what the future looks like. So one of the first things that I wanted to share is, and I think this is a good place to start, we also here at Central Penn have a gaming club, and the gaming club and the esports team are somewhat, I don't want to say necessarily affiliated, but there's some overlap. But so tell me a little bit, Michael, what is the biggest difference between the gaming club and the esports team?
So, in my opinion, I believe the biggest difference is competing. So, gaming club's more for the casual gamers. You want to go hang out, have a good time with your friends, and then esports, you get into competing against other colleges. So that's where the big difference lay.
And I also, one of the things that we actually talked about too, which I can bring Donnie in on this is a little bit different in terms of the commitment level, right? You made the point earlier, Michael, that this is like playing basketball or playing baseball here at Central Penn. There's GPA requirements. There are learning center time that the coaches ask for. So, but you can. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about maybe some of the differences and maybe just, for example, if somebody was interested in joining the esports team, what those differences might be?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is you really need to look and see if you are interested in the competitive side of things. You know, competitive gaming versus gaming for fun is two completely different ball games.
And how so?
We practice at least 3 times a week. That's mandatory, right? So you're going to be in the Steve Shoemaker Gaming Lab, and you're going to be practicing for at least 2 hours per practice. And those are mandatory, and we review films from our previous games. So this is just like any other sport that we have here at Central Penn. We go over plays. We make sure that what we didn't like that what we had previously, you know, we have to make sure that we take care of those things for the next game. So as far as a commitment level, this is much more than it would be in the gaming club, because the gaming club you'd go in and you can always, you know, play the games of your choice. Whereas with this, we are going to be fully focused on the game that we have you that we have you playing for. So
and so just to be clear, the esports team has 2 games specifically that they play, one being Rocket League and one being Call of Duty. And so would you say that there are different people on the team that are on the different games, or are there some people that kind of float back and forth?
We have both. We have some overlap. We do have a captain. The captain of our Rocket League team is actually also on our Vanguard team as well. But there again, it's all depending on, you know, how you play each game. But yeah, we have some that are solely for one game versus the other, and we are not specific for Rocket League or Vanguard. If we had players and enough players to necessitate another team that NACE would offer, we'd be more than happy to field that team. But we would have to know that we would be at least competitive in that game to be able to do it. So.
Now, let me ask, what are some of the other games that are potentially that you could expand to down the road, Michael?
Yeah, so right now, Call of Duty Vanguard, this is actually the last season they're having it for NACE, and they're switching over to the new Modern Warfare. So a lot of our guys tried it when it came out for free for that one night, and, you know, we got some likes, some dislikes. Like I mentioned earlier as well, we have a new student who has played Valorant competitively, so that is another option that we have. And I know when Steve Shoemaker was getting the lab all together and trying for the esports, they had a CSGO team. So a lot of those guys, Valorant and CSGO is super similar. So even some of those guys might be interested in joining.
Angel, I want to go over to you. So you said that you are the captain of the Call of Duty team. Tell me a little bit about how you got into gaming and specifically this Call of Duty. So this specific game, what was it about the game that really you gravitated to?
About Vanguard, it kind of brings me back to like the old Call of Duty days. To me, it's like Modern Warfare 2, but a little bit newer. So it kind of has like the older feel, like the OG games. So then whenever we decided that we were going to play Vanguard, I started playing it, and I started to actually like it, even though a lot of people don't really like it.
And you say a lot of people don't really like it. What do you mean?
If you look at like a tier list or whatever, a lot of people have Vanguard like at the bottom.
What about it is it that most people don't like, I guess is my question.
Probably the time it takes to kill people is probably kind of quick. Yeah.
So just the pace of the gameplay is different than some of the other games that people like. Okay. But how did you, so you just started playing around with it. You said, did you have a lot of experience with the older Call of Duty games?
Yeah, I used to play Modern Warfare 2 back when that came out. I was probably like 10.
So you've been playing Call of Duty for quite some time.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Donnie, how about you? I mean, tell me a little bit more about your kind of past or history with video gaming.
So, I mean, I've always been a video gamer, but I can tell you this, since, you know, being a part of the coaching staff here, I would not want to face any of my teammates here. They made me want to not ever look at a competitive level as far as that's concerned, just because, as we say on the team, I would probably get fried by any one of my players here, you know, just because I've always played for fun. I use it as sort of a decompression tool. A lot of people who know me here know I have 4 daughters, right? So
more power to you, my friend.
Right, yeah. So I kind of use it as a decompression thing, you know. When I wind down for the day, I'll play, you know, Battlefield, or I'll play Call of Duty or anything like that. So, but when I watch Angel play, right, it's on a completely different tier, or different level than what I've ever played, you know, myself. So more than trying to give him tips on gameplay, we'll more try to focus on what we see from the outside looking in, whereas he's able to provide us stuff where, I might not be able to touch from inside. On the outside, we can see where everybody is position-wise, and sort of provide pointers that way, whereas he's able to provide us as coaches with things that we might not be able to see from him side looking from him first person. So
Okay.
it definitely helps that way.
Now, Michael, tell me a little bit more about your history with gaming. What are some of the old games that you used to like growing up, and what are some of the games that you play today?
Man, there's so many, because I can remember starting off with like Super Nintendo and Sega and just playing Sonic and Super Mario Brothers, and like transitioning over to like even PC games, and just the evolution of games and where they were and where they are now. I've always been like an RPG game guy, so I like the open world games where you collect stuff and you level up over time. But I've also always been a Call of Duty person since the first Duty came out. Black Ops, Modern Warfare, all of them. Like, I've played them coming all the way up. So like, I'm pretty skilled too, as a coach. Like, I will definitely, Donnie might not, but I'd have no problem challenging the guys, and
Yeah,
even hopping on and playing with them, it's pretty fun, because I see how competitive other teams are. Like, colleges that aren't in our conference that we just scrimmage against, they are just so competitive and really good at this game. Like, you really see the different tiers of levels of skills in this game.
So the organization that you play within is a little bit different. Our other athletics are in the USCAA conference. You are in the NACE conference. Tell me a little bit about how you started getting to that point where you were getting affiliated and you were going through to sort of apply to be part of NACE. Tell me a little bit more about that process.
Yeah, so we actually got lucky. They just happened and during spring, they just happened to start this affiliate program where they invited in colleges. So to be a part of NACE, dues are $2,500 a year, right? So they started this affiliate program for colleges to try it out, pretty much, and to test what the waters would be like being a part of NACE.
See if they could field a team that could be competitive.
Exactly, and I just happened to hear about it, got signed up, got whoever guys were available, got us signed up. We tested it out. Guys actually did decent. They didn't do terrible.
Captain
the
over
first
here
season.
was beating competitive teams. So
Yeah, pretty much. And then Jeff too. Even like starting off, we had a Rocket League player, Jeff, and then 2 fill-ins who didn't play Rocket League. So Jeff's out there 1v3 in teams.
Wow.
And now he got 2 good teammates, and we see even Angel, we have 3 other guys who actually have been practicing. So we see the improvement over time. So that's how we're able, like, hey, do we want to stay a part of NACE, or should we try to look for another free league to be in? And the guys, they're winning some, they're losing some, but they're right there. So I felt like that they could compete in NACE. So
considering this is your
step.
first year, I mean, you have to be happy with how things are going. I mean,
Man.
you said that so far this season you've been doing really well. I mean, even above your expectations. I mean, for your
Absolutely.
first year to
Right.
be competitive on a high level,
Yeah.
I mean, that's something special.
that just shows the dedication our guys have. I'll be at home, taking care of the kids, and it's 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and boom, someone pops up live streaming. I'm
Yep.
like, let's go, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It's exciting.
So I'll spend a lot of my time moderating on Twitch, and just being in the background, making sure I'm watching them when they're streaming. And it provides us a lot of background details too, to seeing what they're practicing, what they're spending a lot of their times on, even when they're not in practice. They're not in I'll call it forced practice, mandatory
right.
practice with
Yeah,
us. But yeah, it's great to be able to see them from at home, because it's different. If you're in a gym and you're playing basketball, or you're in the field when you're playing baseball, that they have to be there at that time to do practice as a team. Right. This is different because it's on the the digital format, where they can log on at 10:30 at night and practice at any point, right? So yeah, I mean, even when I am recruiting on the admission side of things, I try to say that NACE is like NCAA of video games. It's the easiest way to explain it to prospective students, right? So we're playing against not only colleges local, but we're playing against Michigan, and we're playing against Florida State, and we're playing against things that are out of conference here that we normally wouldn't be playing against. So it really allows us to get that spotlight on our players here that we probably wouldn't be able to see it with a lot of other athletics that we have here.
Now, Angel, other than obviously it being a competition, how is playing competitively different from just playing these games just for fun?
Well, there's a lot of like communication involved, a lot of like call outs, knowing where everyone is at, and a lot of experience playing the game. You know where people spawn at.
No, I mean, that's so interesting. Like I said, we were talking off air about some of our favorite games, and I'm just thinking about, it's fun to just play games, but I can't even. It's got to be like a whole different experience playing in this competition. I mean, you're practicing, you're working together, you're working as a team. So now for both of these, are they both 3-person teams?
Rocket League's 3.
Okay.
Call of Duty's 4.
Okay, so it is a cohesive team, and it's a unit that you need to work together to be able to understand maybe one person's strengths versus another person's weaknesses.
This is the
100%.
hardest part. This is the hardest part of fielding a team
That's
because
strategy, man.
because maybe Angel's gameplay is different than somebody else's gameplay, and we have to find out. And captain, Angel being captain, has to sort of see how all the rest of his teammates are going to play and feel that he has to let them know where the best position that they're going to be at is in. The only way to get that is repetition and gameplay. So,
Nick, I want to bring you in here. I want to give you the opportunity to ask the gentleman a question. Please, whatever questions come into your mind.
Yeah. What games do you like to play that aren't competitive, like, alone?
I like playing League if I'm home or something. Or lately, I've been playing Overwatch 2 because I've been trying to hit 50 wins so I could play ranked and get into it competitively.
Yeah.
Just getting
Why
to
is
that
that?
point.
Why Overwatch 2?
yeah.
It's free?
It's just fun.
But why?
Yeah.
I just think it's fun.
I was trying to get him to say because Overwatch 2 could be another possible game
yeah.
that we could field here.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Is that on the NACE thing, though?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they had Overwatch. Now Overwatch 2 just came out, and they switched over. So
Plus, that's also a lot more accessible because it's free.
yeah, right.
So-
And that's the other thing.
And it's on, like, literally everything.
yeah.
So.
We also have Rainbow Six. We also have that we could play, but what is that? 5 or 6
think
players
it
that we
is.
need.
Yeah, I think it's 5.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the biggest things that we have against us when we field a team is being able to find enough players that are competent enough in the game that we could field against a varsity level team elsewhere, right? Because we just don't want to put any number of players against these other teams that will surely be good enough to be in the league.
Because in my head, that's all these teams do.
Yeah.
Just play that one title.
Right.
That's all they do.
So most esports teams are only focused on just one game.
yeah. Yeah.
So this
It's-
is unique that you guys are playing 2 different games.
Yeah, and it's rare. Like Jeff playing both ways, that's rare. Because a lot of these schools are big enough where they have enough athletes for, they can pick and
Each
choose
individual
who they
game.
Yeah.
Wow, I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
That's so fantastic. So as you kind of reflect here, and obviously for your first season, number 1 from the Nightly News, congratulations
Thank
for being not only so successful, but just getting this up off the ground. I mean,
Yeah.
I look back at getting the Nightly News off of the ground, and this all, we've been around since like 2015. It was for us, it took a very long time to first get a place for us to put our articles and then set up this podcast studio and then get into the sports and athletics broadcasting. I mean, it was the kind of thing that took many, many years to. You've been able, all of you collectively, in a very, very short period of time. The fact that you are not only competing but winning these games it's just really incredible, and it speaks to not only the dedication of you, of course, the student athletes, absolutely. Right. Tell me what the hardest thing was about getting this up and off of the ground.
Let's see. I think the hardest part was maybe choosing a title. Because, like, our guys, like, they can play just about anything, it seems like. 2K is another main game our guys play, Jeff with Rocket League, Angel with League of Legends. Like, he can just play any game, So the versatility of games that our guys can play and just pinpointing one specific title where we can all come together and actually compete, I think might have been the hardest part. But in the future, I think maybe finding guys, I mean, this fall, we had a lot of new students that are actually gamers. So I'm really excited to see what comes in the following semesters. So
Yeah.
By that rationale too, and I'll come back to you too, Donnie, on that question. Obviously, you do have a synergy with the gaming club.
Yeah.
That's almost like your minor league.
Right,
If you find some people in the gaming club that are good at specific titles,
definitely.
you can potentially bring them on board to go to the varsity esports
Right,
team.
definitely.
So nothing else. Yes, you have the people who are just interested in doing it casually. But if you find like a shining star in one of these games, bring them on over.
Open for it.
Yeah,
By
and-
all means, we're open for it.
And so So, at what point has the synergy with the gaming club? How has that gone to this point?
So I mean, to go back to your first question, I would say that a lot of things fell in place at the right time for us as well. A lot of things goes to Mike for putting it all together too, just because. The whole gaming lab came together right before COVID hit, right?
Yeah, gosh, it opened in 2019, right?
Yeah, so it opened, and then COVID hit, and it was sitting over there dormant for the longest time when we came back, right? And Mike came to me, and we're talking. We got to get this thing up and running. It was always empty, right? And it should have been a place for our students to be able to utilize, right? It was this great thing that we put together. We had all new equipment in there. We had gaming chairs. We had this nice space that was specifically made for students. And this whole thing, esports, gaming club, all spawned from Mike saying that we need to get this operating. We need to figure out something that we can do with this. So
it was absolutely dead in there for the longest.
Well, first of all, that time was very strange.
Yeah,
it was.
We came back way before a lot of other students
100%.
at other institutions.
Absolutely.
And coming into that fall term when we did come back, that was sort of another peak between, December and January of 2020 into 21.
Yeah.
So it's understandable that people
it is.
weren't necessary. I've got to be honest with you. We didn't even start the podcast back up. I mean, when we were off campus, we weren't doing it. But we did. We were very, very, very hesitant for probably another 6 months. To get the podcast going because most people just don't want to. Their idea of a good time was not sitting in an enclosed room with other people.
Sure.
And that's a major issue you probably also had to deal with, right?
I mean, we were still in a weird place when we saw that, and then we wanted to make sure that we got at least the lab back open for students when they came back on campus because, like I said, it was this space that we wanted to make sure we had all this technology. Steve Shoemaker, right before he retired, was trying to get this thing up and running. We got everything up and running. He retired, and then we felt like it was just gone after that, right? So Mike asked me if I wanted to be a co-advisor with him in the gaming club, and that's actually where the whole esports gaming club sort of became one thing. There was no separation between it at that point. Right. And then moving forward, as we sort of figured out that we had a team to be able to field on the esports side of things, and we did have interest in the gaming side of things, so having like Mario Kart tournaments each term and that kind of thing. So yeah, there was interest in both of those things, right? That's where we sort of came up with the idea of maybe having separation between church and state. If you will, right? So it sort of spawned on that. It came on good timing. Mike's willingness to put the time in and seeing the advantage of being able to have that space utilized more. So
And that was honestly kind of where I was at too. Back in 2015 when we started the club, it was we just identified like how do we have a communication program when we don't have these outlets for people to do that, and all it was really was just Professor Olympia and I just saying this is something that we need, and really just doing the research and starting to figure out how it works. And it really sounds like I just love to hear stories of you literally created something out of nothing. I mean, I know that Steve Shoemaker, we look back at all of his efforts to get this going was a catalyst to all of this, but then to your point, COVID just any and all momentum that you'd had.
Oh, tore it down.
It was gone. And then, by that time, I'm sure some of your folks had either graduated or moved on in other capacities. So then you're just kind of left with, little to nothing. And I give you so much credit for not only sticking to it and not just saying, oh, well, COVID did us in and we're going to move on. What you've done is really remarkable, all of you. And we as an institution are so proud of you, and I have Casey on quite a bit, and I obviously work with athletics a lot. Right. She is the most complimentary person of everything that you're doing. We are all so proud of you and your efforts that you've made, and frankly, just keep it up, keep going, and keep bringing home some victories for Central Penn. I mean, what else is there to say, right?
I wanted to chime in with one thing is that I noticed COVID was a terrible thing for like especially for games and stuff. Yeah. But I think it really made people realize that esports is an actual sport because that's all they really could do at the time. So I think it kind of brought out the fact that a lot of people didn't really respect it as a sport before that, and now people are starting to see that it is a real medium for that. And the thing I like about games, whether it's competitive or friendly, is that unlike any other sport or any other hobby, it really brings people together.
It does.
Yeah.
And like I've made literally dozens of friends over playing games and stuff that I still have.
Just online,
and it's
just being online.
Even if I hate them when I'm playing the game,
right,
like
right.
you still.
I mean,
it's just great.
I can tell you that esports is one of those things that we are going to, I hate to use the word, but fight to make it seem like, not even seem like, to make people realize that it is just as much a part of athletics as our basketball, as our soccer, as our baseball. Yeah. It is just as much a part of our fabric of athletics that we have here at Central Penn as any other thing. 100%. Because our athletes here are putting in, effort. They're putting in their time. They're making sure their academics are correct. So there is just as much focus and attention on what they do and what they deem as their sport as any other thing. So that call to attention to our sport and detail and focus is going to be there, and we're going to have that argument for a while now until it becomes more mainstream. But honestly, I think COVID really helped bring what we do to the forefront, because when you're stuck inside, you're looking at more digital stuff, and people are looking at more games to watch online. So I think it really helped us in that regard. If one thing that the positive came out of it, sort of brought our sport to the forefront. So.
Yeah, and I did want to give a shout out to our athletes, because we do have guys like Jeff's playing both ways, right? But we have another Rock League guy who's a part of the soccer team, so he's a 2-sport athlete, and another guy who's even part of the baseball team.
Wow.
So I mean, we have guys a part of other sports team that's a part of our.
That's
I like how the one guy's playing also a soccer game. That's funny.
Yeah. The soccer play. Yeah, he's like, guys, I got soccer practice. I'll be late to the scrimmage. I'm like, nah, that's fine. We understand. So yeah.
Well, I wanted to say thank you. I appreciate. So your season kind of corresponds with not only just the summer, but also partially in the fall. Now, is that typical? So just. On centralpennknights.com, your schedule started in September and runs through the end of October. Is there other seasons, or is that like the NACE esports calendar?
So that's our fall season.
Okay.
We also have a spring
season
as well that runs March till about April.
End of April, I think. Yeah,
it depends on whether we make playoffs or not.
Sure.
So we'll play these first 8 weeks and then determine on our records if we'll make playoffs or not.
Not if, right?
When we make playoffs is
right, Angel?
Yeah,
you tell them we're going
100%.
Well, I got to be honest, I am so excited and so happy for all of you and the wonderful things that you're doing, regardless of no matter what happens the rest of the way this season. This is 100% a huge success in your debut season, and I mean, it's only going to get better from here, right?
Exactly. That's what we're looking forward to. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, here's my final question. These contests, where can we find them? Say we want to tune in. How can we do that?
Well, we have our own Central Penn Twitch specifically for gaming. Central Penn does have 2 different Twitches. One is for to cover all bases. One is specifically for gaming, and the reason that is because a lot of the Twitch viewers are looking specifically for gaming, so we wanted to make sure we separated ourselves.
Sure.
Our Twitch handle is
it's CPC Knights E-Sports.
Yeah, just if you go to Twitch, CPC Knights E-Sports is where you can find all of our games.
Awesome. And so you can also go and check out the game times on the centralpennknights.com website. You can just go up to schedules and click on esports. That's going to tell you and share with you when those games are, and then you can check it out on the Twitch station, the Twitch channel that Donnie was talking about, Central Penn Knights Esports on Twitch. So please tune in. Let's help support our fellow Knights, and let's root them on to the playoffs here in the fall, and then wish them the best here in the spring. And we'd love to have you guys back on, before spring season, and talk a little bit more about how the fall season ended up and what you're looking forward to.
Absolutely.
Sounds
Let
like
us know.
a plan.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I just wanted to thank everybody for being here. This is probably the most full house the studio gets typically, but I think it went really well, and I appreciate everybody for being here. Not only head coach Michael Pico and assistant coach Donnie Lewis, but as well as the captain of Call of Duty Vanguard, Angel Gutierrez, and the first-time podcaster here, Nick Hogan, as part of the Nightly News. Again, thank you all so much for being here and taking your time out.
Yep.
Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you, guys.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. We'll see you again next time.